Okay, at this time, I'm going to call to order the regular scheduled meeting for June 19th, 2014 for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. O'Gean, can you now take roll, please?
Absolutely. Chairman Woolley,
Present.
Vice Chair Patrick, Commissioner Petty,
Present.
Commissioner Pranzo,
Present.
Commissioner Garcia.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you all stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Next agenda item for this evening will be agenda item number 4. It's the discussion, approval, or disapproval of the minutes from the regular meeting conducted on March 20th, 2014. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes? If I have no questions or concerns on the minutes, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion we approve the minutes of the regular meeting conducted on March 20th, 2014.
I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 20th. The motion was made by Commissioner Petty and seconded by Commissioner Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes have been approved.
Thank you.
Next agenda item this evening will be agenda number 5A. This is case number PZC 2-14-PUD, the reservoir at Lookout Mountain. It is a presentation, discussion, and recommendation of a planned unit development request by United Engineering Group on behalf of RMG Lucky Hunt LLC to change the existing zoning on approximately 65 acres from single resident ranchette R1R to planned urban development PUD. The reserve at Lookout Mountain PUD is a proposed single-family residential community generally located on the west side of Hunt Highway at the Heritage Road alignment. This case is contingent upon the annexation of the property into the town of Florence per pending annexation 2013-01.
I got the presentation tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I would like to welcome and say hello to both the new commissioners. We have Billy Joe Garcia and Gary Pranzo. Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gilbert O'Gean, Senior Planner with the Town of Florence, and I'll be giving the presentation tonight for the Lookout Mountain PUD. The property in front of you, I would like to kind of help you understand where it's at. It's located off of Hunt Highway. That would be southwest, and there's an image in front of you that shows you the location. It is located adjacent to Hunt Highway, west of the future Walker Butte Parkway alignment and Oasis at Magic Grant Master Plan Community, south of a large parcel of the Arizona State Land Trust, and east of the Gila River Indian Community. The subject site is currently within the jurisdiction of Pinal County. However, it is part of a large annexation by the town of Florence. So tonight I'm just going to briefly explain the current zoning and the proposed zoning. The zoning that is on the property now, when it's successfully annexed, will be single residential ranchette, which is R1R. Tonight we're here to propose a change to plan unit development. This PUD that we gave you guys the packets for, it lays out the land characteristics for the development and will include single-family residential homes and open space. Now, the property is kind of on a hillside, so it would be kind of like a hillside community, but it has multiple residential lots. The size average from 50 by 115 and 60 by 120. In addition to these homes that are being proposed, it also has a nice open space component to it, which includes pocket parks, trail systems, and a community design that kind of keeps it all together, but it also mixes really well with what's already existing out in that area. Now, under the PUD, it's going to develop in phases, as we have here with the Anthem community. The density proposed on this project is 4.0 dwelling units per acre, or 260 residential lots. And the average sizes of those lots are 5,175 square feet, and as large as 7,200 square feet. The actual design is going to be agricultural style that, like I said before, is already existent in the area. It'll have a kind of a different flavor to it, but ultimately it'll be designed to help blend what's already there, and also depending on what the market demands. The report talks about open space, parks and trails. This PUD has at least 15% of overall open space, which is about 9.7 acres. And the park trails and paths, they will follow the 2008 Towns, Parks and Trails and Open Space Plan that we have in place. Now, the water for this site will be supplied by Johnson Utilities, sewer service as well, Johnson Utilities. The transportation and the circulation for this project will conform to the town of Florence and also our town engineer. And there's also going to be a traffic study or traffic impact study that will be in place that will help us guide the transportation for this area. So in conclusion, our findings are that it's consistent with the town of Florence 2020 general plan. The zone change from single-family residential ranchettes, which is R1R, to planned unit development, PUD, for the reserve Lookout Mountain is consistent with the MDR, general plan land use designation in place. Staff does recommend a favorable recommendation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The applicant is here. He's here tonight.
If you're done with your presentation, I think I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing first, and then we'll go to commission questions after that. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing on case number PZC 2-14-PUD, the reserve at Lookout Mountain. This public hearing is now open. Do I have any public that would like to speak on this case? With the absence of the public, I will close the public hearing on case number PZC-2-14-PUD. Public hearing is now closed and open to the commission for questions.
Nothing? No? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I just have a couple. One of them is getting my bearings straight. This is past Magic Ranch, just down the road a little bit?
It's
Is that
to the
correct?
north, I believe. I thought the image. So this is just north of the Magic Ranch community.
Okay, all right. And this is currently county land that we're under
Yes,
the annexation process?
yes, it's under the Magic Ranch annexation. There's two of them that are pending right now.
Okay. Do you have any further questions from the commission? If I have no further questions from the commission, I will take a recommendation.
I make a motion that we forward a favorable recommendation of case PZC-02-14-PU.
I'll second that recommendation.
I have a motion on the floor tonight to forward a favorable recommendation on case number PZC 2-14-PUD. Motion was made by Commissioner Petty and was seconded by Commissioner Pranzo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please forward a favorable recommendation on this case to the Town Council.
Thank you.
Next agenda item for this evening will be agenda number 5B. This is case number PZC 18-14-GPA, Arizona Farms. Presentation, discussion, and recommendation of a minor general plan amendment GPA request by the WLB Group Incorporated on behalf of Eldorado Arizona Farms LLC, Langley Arizona Farms 150 LLC, Wolfley RE Holdings LLC, David C. Phillips, care of BGH Associates LLC, and Superstition Springs R-14 Association. This minor GPA of the town's 2020 general plan future land use map process to change the land use designation on approximately 1,183 acres from employment light industrial to high density residential -1, HDR-1, and community commercial to master plan community. This change would facilitate a subsequent zoning change on the site, which is generally located on the south side of Arizona Farms Road, east of the Quail Run Lane alignment, north of the Heritage Farm alignment, and west of Felix Road. The Copper Basin Railroad bisects the site, and the commercial property at the intermediate southwest corner of Felix Road and Arizona Farms are not part of this application.
Chairman Willie, I apologize that you had to read that long introduction. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening. I do want to just kind of say from the big picture, all the cases that you see on the agenda tonight, I think you realize it, but they're all related to the two annexations that we're doing. Even the adjustment of the corridor, although it has larger impacts, but it kind of was triggered by some of the work that we're doing within the Magic Ranch and Arizona Farms annexation and working with these property owners. So this particular application is an application for a general plan amendment to take the site that has multiple land uses on it today, employment, commercial, residential, commercial, which I stated, but to go ahead and update the land use designations on the property to really reflect that the site is already hard zoned for a master plan community in the county today. And when it comes into the town, it will have comparable zoning, which will be the master plan community, which is largely residential with some commercial. But then what we're planning to do is, after the adoption, assuming the annexation goes through and comparable zoning is applied, we then will have a new PUD to present to you for this property. And in fact, that's scheduled for the agenda on July 10th. So tonight you're just going to see the big bubble picture that is showing that this will be a master plan community. On July 10th, you're going to see exactly what's going to go into those bubbles. So you're talking about essentially almost two sections of land here, connecting up to the town, and it's really in a pretty critical area along the Arizona Farms corridor between Quail and Felix Road, Attaway right in the middle. And as you can see on these maps, that swath that's going through there is reflective of where the ADOT north-south freeway corridor will ultimately be located. And in fact, this is one of the areas of almost certainty of where the corridor has to go, whereas there's some wiggle room north and south of this area. The alternatives that are on the table right now with the ADOT study is it is threading through this particular area between hitting Arizona Farms Road between Felix and Attaway. So Eldorado Holdings, Langley, they actually, we had started this process working with different landowners, and Eldorado Holdings came into the picture. We probably have done a year and a half of work trying to master plan the property and deal with some of the transportation issues and planning for the corridor in a very short amount of time. So they've been wonderful to work with. And for your information, if you're not aware, Eldorado Holdings is the same Eldorado that comes out of Rancho Eldorado. They pretty much have, from my perspective, they put the growth on the map in Maricopa, in the city of Maricopa. So we're just extremely pleased to have them as a player in this market. We know that they're going to do wonderful things on this property. And so really what we're doing is changing the general plan to be consistent with the zoning that will come in, to be consistent with the fact that we're largely dealing with one master developer, and to be consistent with the master plan that you're going to see on July 10th that will give you more details on the zoning, updating the north-south corridor alignment on the property, and just preparing for the property hopefully to be annexed into the town, so we have opportunities to develop the wonderful plan. You will see, you can't see it really here today in this plan, but when the zoning comes in, you're going to see that the property still has substantial non-residential components to it. So it will have it'll still have opportunities for multifamily, single-family, various products, commercial employment, some employment probably more on the lines of commercial-oriented and office-oriented, and you'll see that detail a little bit later. And I think with that, we have gone through the analysis that's required to do a general plan amendment, and I'm not going to walk through every one of those questions and responses for you, but you can see that there's a thorough response to all the questions that are necessary in our process of evaluating the appropriateness of a general plan amendment. And we do have findings in support of the case, and we do have a recommendation to send a favorable recommendation to the mayor and town council on this case. And this is a public hearing, and I would be happy to address any questions you may have.
Okay, with that, I'm going to open up the public hearing for case number PZC 18-14-GPA Arizona Farms. Public hearing is now open. Do I have any public that would like to speak on this case? Sir, address the microphone with your name and address for record, please.
Yes, my name is Phil Hollins. I live in Magic Ranch, Poseidon Road, 25374 North Poseidon Road. Before you make a decision on this particular lot, I ask that you, before you say favor or not favor, I ask that you hold that decision before, so we can get, when we get to our particular property in Magic Ranch, because I think these two are tied together. The issue that I have is tied together to both.
Well, I'd be interested to know what the issue is and let you decide whether you think that is appropriate.
Yeah,
If you want-
just
go
until
ahead.
the end of the proceeding.
If you want, go ahead and say what your issue is now.
Okay, well, it's more focused on the Magic Ranch area. So I can wait. I just want, unless you need me to talk about it now.
We have to vote on this one now.
Yeah, they're separate, they're freestanding separate applications, and in this case, it's a general plan amendment. So
Right.
if the concern is more on the other one, I think may want to defer that to that particular case.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move forward on this one, because I think what the staff is trying to say is they're not.
Right, understand.
This is just a general plan amendment, is all it is.
Right.
I think it's a 30-year general plan that we're sitting on right now.
I understand.
So it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay.
It's over a long period of time.
I understand.
So-
Okay, I'll go ahead and mention this. All right, when you look at the property that's there, right now it's considered a high-density residential, correct? Is that correct?
This particular piece of property?
Yes.
Actually,
That's what it says on your sign. That's what I'm asking.
yeah, actually,
Okay.
this piece of property has multiple land use designations on it. It has employment,
Right,
light
and-
industrial,
and-
commercial, high-density residential.
Right, and high-density residential is which basically is condominiums, townhouses, and apartment complexes. Okay, and also I think you have one also off of Felix Road that is currently designated the same, but you want to change that one also to master plan community. So my question is, when we talk about the Magic Ranch area, why are we giving this one a less favorable versus these are more favorable zoning? The one that's within 300 feet of our home, that's what I'm asking. So that's why I figured that they both have bearing on one another, because when you have one property that is already designated as single residential ranch that's within 300 feet of our home, and then you have these that are already high-density residential that can deal with the larger populations. Why do you put, where's the common sense in putting an apartment complex near my home versus these little two slots that you have available that can hold that? That's my question.
Well, we'll actually have a variety of land uses depicted on the general plan and ultimately zoned and ultimately developed throughout the community. So, there may be single-family and commercial land uses here, but there will be those same uses, elsewhere throughout the community. So, this particular property, it's in its ownership and its application, it is a freestanding application, and for clarification, it is already hard zoned for a master plan community in the county. So when it comes into the town, that's what it will be. We're just actually trying to make it better and in the process to accommodate where the freeway corridor will occur. It does have the employment designation on it because in 2008, the owners of the property then were trying to take advantage of some incentives that were in the solar industry and work with us on developing some type of industrial use related to the solar industry on the property. And we worked and worked and worked on that, and it didn't pan out, unfortunately. So the property continued to be zoned for the variety of land uses in the county. So, but just to be clear, there will be a variety of land uses on this project, including probably higher density, more intense types of uses, because it's reflective of there ultimately being a freeway corridor on the property, and major arterials such as Arizona Farms, Attaway, Felix, going through the property, and it is a freestanding application and not related to the Magic Ranch and the other applications that are on the agenda tonight.
So like I said, my point is, our community is being changed. They want to change ours to a multifamily residential, which is apartment complexes. You know, and then I guess there's something about light industry also. So that's why I'm saying my concern is, if you already have a couple of areas that are designated to hold these, apartment complexes and all these different other entities, why do I need a football field away from my house? An apartment complex.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the gentleman obviously has a point to make, but I think it's clearly related to, I believe it's probably the case on the state land,
Right,
where there's a proposal for some multifamily land uses. So it is not related to this particular case whatsoever.
Okay.
Well, that's why I asked. That's why I said
Yeah,
that I think
that's
they're
why I was
connected.
getting confused too, because
Right.
I'm trying to look at the map and read the description, and then I'm looking at that case that's two down the agenda.
And like I said, it does have more to do with that one, but like I said, when you look at these two particular ones, this one and another one you're talking about, you look before you give a vote for it, is what I'm saying, to look at it and say, wait a minute, they have these two areas that are already zoned for that, what they're trying to do in behind my home. So what's the common sense of switching those up? Because basically that's what it looks like. That's all.
Thank you. Is there any more public that would like to speak on this case?
Yes, sir.
State your
Good
name and
evening.
address.
My name's Keith Bray. I'm a resident of Magic Ranch Ironhorse, 5651 East Helios Drive. I'd just like to reiterate the point that's been made. If you make a decision at this moment in time on this proposal, it does reflect the item 2 down on the agenda. Under this current request here is to change this from employment light industrial and high density residential, which it is currently zoned as, and change it to the master plan development. And immaterial of what's been said by down here, that this is already in the county and the state and it's going to go through no matter what. This is a request that needs to be confirmed and reiterated by you gentlemen this evening, and prior to the annexation of the Magic Ranch and Arizona Farms annexation request. So it does reflect on the item further down the agenda, and I would request that you don't vote on this particular issue at this time, as there are several objections to it. In effect, what's going to happen is you're going to remove high density, something that's already zoned high density multifamily from this location to a location that is a lot closer to current single family residences. And it does have a great impact on the item 2 down the agenda.
And just for clarification, so the MPC is just a single land use category because it's done by a master developer. So within the MPC, there's still LDR, MDR, HDR, community commercial, maybe office. All those land use designations are still there, and when the property is zoned, it still is intended to have those uses. it will have more intense commercial and high-density uses on this property probably than it does in the county today, because now we're reflecting that the north-south corridor is here. So, so keep in mind that it's not an if this, then that, or one or the other. This property will still have those land uses on it, and there's just no correlation between acting on this application and the other application.
Okay.
Hello,
sir.
my name is John Danico. I lived at 5597 East Dionysus Drive. The League of Arizona Cities and Towns has provided a guide for annexation, and one of the elements of that guide states that any changes in state land designations should wait till after an annexation. Although it's legal to do what you guys are doing with all these Arizona land development things, it's not in the best practices of an annexation program. And it's failed to allow us, the citizens most directly impacted by this with immediate changes in ground right around us, to adequately study what you guys have been working on for years. It's, in my opinion, extremely harmful for me, my finances, and I'm sure I could say that for a lot of the people who are here tonight. We get the feeling that you're running roughshod over us and springing a trap on us that you guys have been working on for years, and we get just the last minute to start doing research on it. And I would encourage you to follow the guide provided by the League of Arizona Cities and Towns and wait till this annexation process is complete so that there can be a full and complete disclosure of all the data at your disposal to the communities most impacted.
Chair, members of the commission, I just want to note that he's talking actually about a different application and not this application. So I think we're wandering off of this one, and I just want to be cautious that we're not tying the two of them together.
Yeah, please remember that we are currently acting on case number PCC 18-14. We're not discussing the state property right now. All we're discussing at this point is if we're going to switch it to what it currently is to a master plan community. It doesn't change what can be built inside that master plan community. All it does is give the developer the ability to shift property. That's all it does. Okay? They can still put low density, high density, multiple things within an MPC. Okay? This case tonight, all we're doing is switching it from light industrial and high density 1 to master plan community. It's really not going to change what's going to end up on the property. Ultimately, it could still be high density, low density, medium density, whatever that developer puts there. Okay? So we really need to finish this case, and then when we get to the state case, then we'll all discuss the state case at that time. Okay? Is there anybody else that would like to speak about this case, which is just amending our general plan? That's all it's doing at this point. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on it? Please address the microphone with your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Fuller. I live at 5493 East Demeter Drive, Florence. I am a licensed civil engineer in the state. I would argue that being within 2 miles of other things, that this does have a great impact on the community. The other thing is specific to this case. I'm trying to say very specific. The gentleman over here did say that there is some more information coming out within the next 10 days on this. Actually, I don't like to make any decisions without the full information. I mean, I would ask that you at least wait until all the information is on the table before making a favorable recommendation. I think 10 days is a small time to wait to get the additional information that this gentleman is willing to plan. I mean, I'm interested. I'm hoping you are too.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, there's not actually additional information on this case. There's a second case that's forthcoming on July 10th that'll also go through a public hearing. So
Completely separate?
it's completely separate. This is a general plan amendment, and then you'll be seeing a rezoning on the property. So completely separate cases. We're not hiding anything on this application or trying to mislead anybody. This is a general plan amendment to a master plan community, and then you'll see a zone change on it.
Do I have any others? Public? Come forward, ma'am. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Linda Cheney. I'm with Eldorado Holdings, and we are the landowner, the majority landowner of this property. We purchased it in February of this year. We purchased 13 different acquisitions, and now we're bringing it into one, and there are two other entities that are a part of this general plan amendment, and then will it be a part of a zoning case that Mark is referring to. So this case is just changing the general plan land use from what it is now to the master plan community. There's a whole separate application that was submitted to the town on the zoning case. The area west of the railroad is residential. There's no multifamily in it. There's no commercial. It's residential. The area east along the north-south freeway corridor, there's going to be some apartment, high density, and there's going to be commercial, and then there will be additional residential going to the south. We are going to do the highest quality project. I mean, it's going to be an anthem. That's what Eldorado Holdings does. So I hopefully just wanted to quiet everybody down. This is not approve this tonight and then we're going to have houses next month. We have a zoning to do, then we have preliminary plats, we have final plat and all the engineering plans, and we're years out from doing anything on the property. But rest assured, it will be a very high quality property. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You know, do I need to give my address?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, it's 426 North 44th Street, Suite 100, Phoenix, Arizona 85008. And again, my name is Linda Cheney.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Do you have any more public that would like to speak on this case? If I have no more public on this case, I'll close the public hearing, which is now closed, and open it to the commission for questions.
Let me make sure I got this straight. Right now, the land is in the county, and it has zoning that includes light industrial and high density, and what we're doing has nothing to do with changing the zoning right now. It's simply taking these parcels, or this whole parcel, almost 1,200 acres, taking it out of what we would call a zoning code and putting it into a master plan community, which is simply some words that exonerates it from the current code and creates a new code for this land. Would that be a correct way to state that?
I think that's fairly accurate. Yes, there's the property is hard zoned for a master plan community in the county.
All right.
When it comes in, if the annexation is successful, it would come in, it would receive that comparable zoning automatically. Their goal is they want to do a richer, higher quality development than was originally envisioned when the plan was first established probably over a decade ago in the county. Crestfield Manor actually is part of the Arizona Farms PUD, and I think even some of the other areas were originally part of this master plan that was envisioned maybe close to a decade ago. Tonight, though, we're just strictly looking at the master plan community land use designation in the general plan. We're doing that because when you work with a property that's almost 2 square miles, it just offers some flexibility to go through the process of where these things are going to be laid out in the zoning and how they might evolve over time. For instance, the other master plan community that we have in town is Anthem at Merrill Ranch. It's a big project that develops over time. They may decide to shift some of the parcels around over time to respond to the market. This gives them that flexibility. They still have to go through a zoning amendment process down the road if they do that. It's still a public process. but this is certainly the appropriate land use for this type of plan when you're dealing with a master developer, like a Shea, like a Pulte, like an El Dorado. There's actually, 10 years ago, I probably could have listed several more, but there's not that many, major high-quality, master developers anymore. We're dealing with, now we're dealing with two of the best in the area. So, and this, I think, the comments that we're hearing, I know that they're coming up because of the state land piece, and I respect the concerns that people are raising, but I just don't want them to be confused that it's if we do this and we can't do that, or vice versa. This is really out of all fairness to the applicant and all the hard work that they've put in and what they've done to acquire this property. This is a freestanding application, and they're really doing a wonderful thing here on this property. And as the applicant also indicated, west of the railroad, it is single-family residential that's planned in this area, and also they're trying to work with us to develop a municipal park, not a little HOA park. They're trying to do a park on that site as well, and they're also working with the school district. So they're really trying to do a quality master plan where they're going to have all of these components that are needed in a cohesive master plan.
Well, I know it's not included in the package right now, and I know it's coming down the road, so I'll just make it as a statement, but not a question. As you know, employment is one of my pet peeves. Florence does not export any goods or services to import dollars. And this land is located in a unique area in that it can draw talent not only from Florence, Central Florence, but also from Johnson Ranch, Santan. So you're going to need a very convincing story for me to give up light industrial land. Just to let you know that's coming. That's it. I'm done.
It says in the paper we got that you received comment from one person when this was made. It says, as of writing, staff has talked to one nearby resident that expressed concerns.
Yes.
I was wondering, besides the people that spoke today and this one resident, if any others had come to you since.
We've received, I believe, another call a few days ago regarding this piece. Just concerns, trying to understand general plan amendment versus zoning.
So yeah, it wasn't any type of complaint or anything, it was just...
No, it was concerns. I mean,
Yeah.
they just were trying to understand what it was and why all these zoning signs and general plan amendment signs are popping up in close proximity.
Thanks.
I wanted to ask for clarification, and Diane, you may be able to answer this question, or Mark. Just to clarify, my understanding is that the fact that there was high-density indication on this property that is now being changed to a master plan community does not necessarily mean, or does not mean, that that high-density development would be moving to another location. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. In fact, the intensity or the amount of high-density development envisioned for the property probably is going to increase. This action is not going to take that away, because in the zoning it will still have those uses.
That would be related to the north-south corridor
Because
and not
of-
to any change in the...
Because the freeway corridor is there, and because really they're in between where, Felix and Attaway and that Arizona Farms area, it's even in the Dobson Farms project immediately north of it, we've envisioned the opportunity, going in and out, the opportunity for those more intense uses right in that area. It will be actually probably one of the most productive areas, and I think Mr. Pronzo is correct as well that there's also I know we're going to talk a little bit about state land later on, but there's a substantial amount of state land, and to the northwest of this area there's 3 sections of state land that in the middle of it is where the railroads come to meet. Yeah. And those are 3 sections that we have eyed very, very carefully, and would love to absolutely preserve the opportunities that you know, that configuration of the state land might have for us.
Thank you.
I want to clarify just again, I know we probably said it 12 times, but west of the railroad tracks will be single-family residential homes, correct?
Chairman, Willie, members of the commission, yes, when you get the zoning plan, you're going to see single-family homes, parks, school site planned on the west side. On the east side, single-family homes, some higher density homes, some commercial. Within that commercial component, actually, I envision that it would probably be more of a mixed use. It would have a combination of commercial, employment, and office located within it.
And if I understand the vision of the applicant, which we commonly see in our sister county up here, if there is going to be the higher residential area, higher density residential areas, we're looking closer to the corridor than we are away from the corridor. Generally, we see apartment complexes and stuff like that going up next to the freeway systems versus the big homes. Would I be wrong in saying that?
Freeway systems, major arterials, of course, you can go to any of the cities and you're going to see that the more, you know, ultimately apartments, the commercial, it's gravitating towards you know, arterials or freeways, but you know, there's not a freeway every mile, so I mean, you'll see these things along arterial roadways. So even long before the freeway corridor is here, there will be an opportunity as enough rooftops develop to get some of those uses even before, you know, even ahead of the freeway.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any further questions from the commission? If I have no further questions or discussion from the commission, I'll take a recommendation.
I have a recommendation to approve the minor general plan amendment subject to the conditions outlined. Would you like me to read them?
They're on the record.
Thank you.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
I have a motion to forward a favorable recommendation to the Town Council on case number PZC 18-14-GPA Arizona Farms. The motion this evening was made by Commissioner Garcia and seconded by Commissioner Pranzo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please forward a favorable recommendation on the minor GPA amendment.
Thank you.
The next case tonight will be case number 5C. This is case number PZC 20-14-PUD, Ashburn at Magic Ranch. This is a presentation and discussion and recommendation of a request by United Engineering Group on behalf of Palms Magic Ranch 80, LLC, to replace the existing planned unit development zoning with a new planned unit development. The Ashburn at Magic Ranch PUD is a planned single-family resident community of approximately 80 acres that is generally located west of Mitchell Trail, south of Arizona Farms Road, and east of the Union Pacific Railroad. This case is contingent upon the annexation of the property into the town of Florence per annexation 2013-01.
I know that.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations on reading those long introductions. I know I'd mess up. The case in front of you, this is a planned unit development, a proposed PUD for Ashburn and Magic Ranch. So this is just a real simple planned development. Currently, it's in the county, and it has a planned area development that is currently on the property. Upon successful annexation, it'll be given comp zoning, which would be PUD, and tonight this would be the new PUD that we're talking about in the packet. It's located along North Mitchell Trail, about a quarter mile south of East Arizona Farms Road in Pinal County, and is currently under the jurisdiction of Pinal County. So this one is pretty straightforward. In front of you is kind of a rendering of how it would lay out, and as you can see, as I spoke before, we do have a required amount of open space. There's at least 15% I believe this one's going to have about 9 acres of open space. The lots they're all residential, and they're going to vary from 6,000 to 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. Lot sizes are 45 and 55 by 115. Really not a whole lot to talk about on this property. It's pretty typical of what you see in the area. As mentioned before, this property is directly north of the current Magic Ranch community, so it should be a good fit. And it does follow the 2008 Towns Park Trails and Open Space. As mentioned before, it's real similar to what you see at Anthem. Doesn't quite have as many amenities yet, but the PAD is already in place, so this is just going to roughly mimic that. It is per the general plan. That's consistent with the 2020 general plan. It does have a medium density residential general plan amendment on it right now. The water is going to be provided by Johnson Utilities, sewer by Johnson Utilities, transportation. We'll further get into that as this PUD starts to develop. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Applicant is here tonight to answer any questions you may have. But I want to be clear that it's already under a planned area development, which is identical to what we're proposing tonight.
Well, Chair, members of the commission, I just want to note one thing on this project. Gilbert, if you could forward the slide. The property owner that represents this property and several other properties has just been really great to work with, and they've offered to donate the 4-acre fire station site that you see there. So with planning for these annexations, we've also have been looking for these opportunities where we could get the next police station, fire station / police substation, parks, etc. You know, we're trying to provide all the elements of community out in this area. So really appreciative of what the property owner has offered there, and the fire department is satisfied with that location. That gives them pretty close access to Arizona Farms Road without being immediately driving out to an arterial there. And the other thing too on the property is that this property, all this area was master planned and zoned 10, 15 years ago. I mean, this is actually part of the Magic Ranch development, so it is all platted in the county for single-family homes. And instead of just coming in with that plan that was already out there for a long time, they came in to us and worked with a better plan to change the product and the layout a little bit and accommodate the fire station, have a little bit more buffer along the railroad. So just absolutely wonderful working with them and their engineering department on this application. That's my 2 cents.
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open on case number PZC 20-14-PUD, the Ashburn at Magic Ranch case. Is there any public that would like to speak on this one?
Hi, my name is Anne Marie Rakoski. I live at 5773 East Artemis in Magic Ranch. And I'm just wondering, with all these planned and proposed housing, several different kinds, I'm wondering how many houses are planned to build. I live in Magic Ranch, and I have to say that there's probably more than half of the lots not built on yet. Can't we build on the ones we have before we start all these other ones?
Thank you.
My 2 cents.
State your name and address for the record, sir.
My name's Paul Jackson. I live on 24527 Old Dutchman Way, Lost Dutchman Way. And if I read the map correctly, on the south end of the map is Mitchell Trail. Has anybody here been down Mitchell Trail? Because you can stand in the road, and I can come into ruts this deep. The road's not paved. Is there any provision for access to this? Living in Magic Ranch, I live in the estates at Magic Ranch, and we've been trying to get that road paved for I don't know how long. And the only thing we ever hear is that there's problems with getting the access, that it's owned by private parties. It's a nightmare to build a road. Well, if it's a nightmare to build a road for us to have at Magic Ranch, for the record, at Oasis, that's the only entrance in and out without going down Mitchell Trail, which the fire department in Pinal County considers inaccessible. And state law requires an entrance and an exit. And I've been dealing with the state. Pinal County has put the road under a study, which allows them to get the state off their back about this. But that road is a nightmare. And you're going to put another development in there and a fire station in there. What do we have for a road coming in there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Chair, members of the commission, just to respond to that, if I might, we are trying to do our best in the process of annexation in this area to try and reduce as many of the issues that are out there, particularly on the Magic Ranch side of the annexation. So the town had nothing to do with creating the situations that are out there as far as the lack of connectivity between subdivisions and restricted access and the use of some dirt roads and so forth. Our plan, which we've stated over and over at many annexation meetings, is we want to come in there and we want to do our best to improve the situation that is out there. And we're not, we're not going to tell any, we're not going to exaggerate that we're going to do things overnight. It's going to be a process out there. But this particular project, though, again, Magic Ranch has been out there zoned forever. And this property is zoned and it is platted, and whether it came into the town or whether it stayed in the county, it would continue to be developed for single-family homes. I think it's advantageous that they're excited about coming into the town, dedicating the fire station site, and they would, of course, develop all the roads in the subdivision and Mitchell Trail adjacent to their property as an obligation of development. They may even be willing, quite frankly, to look at working with us to dedicate Mitchell Trail to see if we can do improvements on it. We're limited in doing improvements, obviously, on private property. But if there's a way we can work together to get with this owner some of that Mitchell Trail dedicated, maybe we can speed up some of the improvements potentially in advance of the subdivision occurring. And then as far as the timing of when lots developed, that's something that's completely out of our hands. We obviously would love to see them develop sooner rather than later. We do know over time that all of these subdivisions, all these lots are going to build out, and that's the reality. And we're planning and preparing for that the best that we can.
Do I have any more public who would like to speak? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Scott Lenz. I'm with United Engineering, 3205 West Ray Road, Chandler, Arizona. I represent McCrae Group, the owners of the property here. And one of the things on this property, we currently have an active preliminary plat and on this property for 320 lots. And so that is accurate that we came in here and we wanted to do something. I mean, I'm not sure if your packet shows the existing preliminary plat, but it doesn't have some of the open space. It doesn't have the fire station. So this is one thing that we wanted to come in here. Mr. McCrae has several properties in the Magic Ranch area. It's certainly in our best interest to make circulation, everything in this area better, not worse. And so this plan is 304 lots. I mean, this would be less intense than 320 lots, but that's not even really, really the point. What the point is that the town needs a fire station in this area. This is a development. If for us to build on here, we've got to improve Mitchell Trail, the half width of improvements of Mitchell Trail. So that will at least help the problem from Arizona Farms Road down to the south end of our development, but we're going to be as interested as the neighbors in getting the circulation for the whole area worked out. And again, the town, this is a county issue right now. And so this is just something after the annexation that we'll be working with the town to try to improve the situation everywhere out there. So that's all.
Thank you very much, sir. Do you have anybody else who would like to speak on this case? I need you to restate your name and address for the record.
Phil Hollins, 253 North Poseidon Road, 25374 North Poseidon Road, Florence, Arizona. Well, you know that. Okay, just listening to what he was saying about the land, all right? Well, first of all, the fire station that you have there, who's going to be paying for that? Is that going to be another bond or something like the folks in Anthem who were paying a lot of money in bonds down there? The other question is, how does the Magma Flood Control District play in this, since you're going to put all this new property into the flood district? So are they going to end up being bonded, or like we are right now, because we're covering for all these mistakes and stuff that have been on the Magma Dam? So well, my question is that they're basically going to be right downwind of the actual flood control district. And if there's an incident, we're a little bit further off, we're a little bit protected. The elevation in our area is a little bit higher. But some of these other projects are going to go right through that area. And my background is emergency management, so just thought I'd share that.
Thank you, sir.
Chair, members of the commission, the property does not sit in a floodplain. It may be in the Magma Flood Control District, and that is completely, that's a separate governmental or quasi-governmental agency that has some taxing authority. And I know that they, there is that component on the tax bill that's out there, and that changed recently because they did improvements to the Magma Dam structure. But that was, the town had absolutely no say in that process. I mean, we are ultimately glad, the county's glad, I'm sure, and all the residents should be thankful that that structure is in the process of being brought up to par, because there were noted deficiencies in the structure. That's being addressed. But as far as the district and the taxation, the town would have nothing to do with that aspect. The fire station is being donated to the town, so there would be no cost to purchase the land. As far as developing the fire station, typically that would come out of the capital improvement plan, which may involve probably in this scenario either funds that are transferred from the general fund or otherwise, but there's no CFD established on this property. So I think as far as a financing mechanism, they're referring to Anthem, which has a community facilities district, and that was beneficial in getting that project developed and the ongoing development. But there are no CFDs planned on this property, and no discussions of any other bonding or financing scenarios for the fire station. At this point, we would look at putting it in the CIP and look at when it would be necessary to either put an interim station on the site first of all, and then ultimately plan for a permanent fire station.
Thank you. Do I have any more public that would like to speak on this case? No, you need to do it at the microphone, sir.
These maps are really poorly shown to us. Mitchell Trail is going on this map from right to left, and actually north is going from right to left. I don't know why we don't have north to the top, so we can visualize what we're talking about here. But you're talking about putting a fire station in, and there is no road that you could get a fire truck in and out of there. So is there anything to match this fire station coming in?
Well, Chair, members,
there is no access to that piece of property right now that would allow a fire truck to get in or get out.
Well, Chair, members of the commission, If the annexation is successful, as we've stated to everybody, first of all, we'll be utilizing the Anthem at Merrill Ranch Fire Station Number 2 site to have a home base. As the need develops to have the station here or have it in the Arizona Farms property, 1, 2, 3 more stations, whatever it may be, those will be brought online. The town is not going to develop a fire station and bring on, the things related to the development of the fire station without dealing with the access and circulation. We're going to make sure that we have continuity, access to getting in and around the area with the fire truck. And in fact, even prior to this site being developed, again, that's why we're working on trying to do whatever we can initially before any of these other projects develop to try and make sure that we've improved the situation out there. We are aware, we're working already with the county, and we're working with all these property owners that have these major pieces to figure out, how can we connect some of these pieces of the puzzle out there. Again, we're kind of bravely and willingly going into an area to try and improve the situation and make it better and add this area to our community. We know there are issues, obviously, but we've stated all along our willingness and our interest in improving the situation.
Thank you. Do we have any more public that would like to speak on this case? With the absence of the public, I'll close the public hearing on case number PCC 20-14-PUD and open it to the commission.
Mark, and if the public would excuse me, I'm a new guy at this, so I have to ask questions. Just to kind of put this in a nutshell, everything I heard tonight. This PUD currently exists under the county and has existed for well over a decade. So there's nothing new about having a PUD on this land. And if I understand this right, because the land is a candidate to be annexed into Township of Florence, the United Engineering Group and staff have taken the opportunity to revisit this and upgrade the wording, play with the plot a little bit. But there's really nothing etched in granite other than maintaining it as a PUD, just under Florence rather than Pinal County. Would that be a correct statement?
It's essentially the identical zoning remaining on the property that's there today. But with this PUD, though, we're reducing the number of lots, adding the fire station, and increasing open space. And I believe probably there's greater clarity about what their obligations are as far as development is concerned, that they're doing half-street improvements to Mitchell and et cetera. So
the roads and whatnot in and around it belong to the county, and we're all aware of how good the county's road department works. Even better, how well ADOT works. So once it comes into the town, as conditions change, the improvements will be made. Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, we would like to be more aggressive than waiting for the additional subdivisions to come online to start dealing with things. We would like to be out there just trying to deal with situations as soon as we can as far as Mitchell Trail, which is, I agree, it's a horrible road that people go down. I mean, I wouldn't even, you can't even call it a road, quite frankly. And there is poor access to some of the subdivisions that were built. I'm not sure exactly how that was allowed to occur over time, but our goal is to not just wait for new subdivisions and home builders to come into this area and have them and work with them to fix all the things, but to see if we can go in there and do things ahead of time on a more aggressive schedule than the county has had.
Wow. I know we'll do it better than the county did. That's it.
So I guess I want to just reiterate that this is all contingent on whether we annex the property or not. And if we don't annex the property, the applicant still can build on that property because he still has a current PUD. The only difference is the product will not be as nice because it's under the county PUD versus the proposed town PUD. So my concern, and Gilbert, can you take me back one slide? I'm going to beat the roads to death because my big concern is the road. I've seen a lot of developments that have come up with what I call half streets. So I do have a problem with that. What I need to understand is the development to the left, that is the D.R. Horton development, correct? Yes. Right, but it was built by D.R. Horton, correct? Okay. So, and they currently have, their access into their development is down the middle right here.
They have an access, yes,
Currently, that's still county land or is that Florence?
that's county.
Okay, they currently have what I would call a less than standard access to that community. It barely fits 2 cars in 2 directions. There's no curbs, there's no sidewalks. I don't want to see that happen again. And what I'm seeing right now, sir, during a public hearing you can speak, now it's our turn, okay? What I'm seeing right now is we're saying that the developer is only able to deal with half of it. So again, we're going to end up with half roads. And I'll use Sunrise Estates as an example. The very last road in Sunrise Estates is a half road. 1 vehicle at one time can go up and down that road, and that is it. There's got to be another way if we're going to annex that land. Why can't we talk to the owners and annex the other half so we can build full roads? That's the part I'm confused on. So, because that's what I see is a half road going in that's going to cause a traffic issue, and I'm a little concerned there. So.
Well, our preference, Chair, member of the commission, is obviously to build full roads, or sometimes, and you can see, I mean, the way that we would prefer to do things is reflected in, you know, either within the core of town actually, or more modern, from a more modern perspective within the Anthem community. So even Felix Road is not the full build out of the road yet, but a lot of people may not know that because we actually built what resembles a full road within the middle of the section. So Hunt Highway adjacent to the property, even though we didn't develop on the west side of the property for the most part, we developed the full section of roadway through there. So certainly it is always preferable to not do a scalped road or a half road, particularly if that road is providing your major access or maybe potentially your only access to a subdivision. It's not ideal. And again, you know, we want to go into this area and fix as much of that as possible. And we're doing it with El Dorado, and we're doing it with United Engineering's groups. We're doing it with everybody, saying, you know what, let's start putting all these pieces of the puzzle together and figure out how we can deal with things. You know, we have, in addition to the fact that how they were platted and how they were developed and how roads haven't been maintained, dedicated or maintained, but you also have you know, the Union Pacific Railroad going through there, which really restricts your east-west continuity.
Correct.
You have Johnson Section 11 wastewater treatment plant that affects issues on the, you know, unfortunately on the west side of the Magic Ranch community that I think a lot of the folks live here today, the county allowed the roadway to be abandoned on the west side, which is actually a section line roadway. They could have had actually another point of ingress and egress, a substantial point of ingress and egress on the west side of Iron Horse, the subdivision that you see there, but that right-of-way was allowed to be abandoned. The county also allowed the right-of-way to be abandoned on the west side of the Section 11 wastewater treatment plant, which also makes it, you know, again, hard to build these arterials. So, you know, now that the puzzle's been kind of broken up into little pieces, we're coming in here trying to figure out how to put it back together. And
I'm not against the PUD at all. That's not my issue. My issue is we're putting yet another development in there. Either way, whether we annex it or not, there's a development going in there. My concern is, is it Iron Horse? Is that what the other development's called?
The Iron Horse is what you see there on the map, probably on the left side of your
We're creating that same environment where it's one road out, and then the roads are substandard to get those people out. And then that brings up my next concern that I was going to. So even if we make the road better, now we're dumping them onto Arizona Farms, which is even, it's just not adequate to carry the traffic. So all the development's great, and I have no problem with that. But my thought is the closer we annex to Arizona Farms, we've really got to think about the infrastructure that's in place and what are we doing in the bigger picture to make it adequate. And I'm talking strictly roadways right now, nothing else. We're dumping lots of vehicles onto single-lane roads. And I love using Gansel and Ironwood up in the Castle Rock or Castlegate area, where until they went through and widened that whole thing, it used to take 2 hours to go from US 60 all the way down to Ocotillo because the roads were just jam-packed. So not against the PUD, I'm more against the fact that we're not looking at the roadway structures and making sure that we're going to allow, what do we say, 304 homes? At 2 cars per piece, that's 608 cars that we're adding to an area that is not adequately set up on the roads.
And we are trying to address that. And then, the other issue that you have, and you can see on this aerial, is the really lesser planned, larger lot subdivisions that occur really to the south of this side and to the east of this side to some extent. Some larger lots with trailer homes or single family homes, and that in turn affects some of your issues with access and circulation. In some cases, you have more dirt roads that you have to contend with. So what we're trying to do in this particular case on the east side of the railroad is look at what we can do with Quail Run, look at what we can do with Mitchell Trail, look at what we can do with the Heritage Alignment. How can we tie in basically what will occur on Arizona Farms west of the Copper Basin Railroad with what's happening here on this side, with what's happening to the south with Magic Ranch, so that we can ultimately give some people some options, that they could come out to Arizona Farms, that they could come out at multiple locations, not just at one location, that they could work their way out to Hunt going west somehow, or they could work their way out to Hunt going south. That it's just not a whole bunch of communities with that kind of come close to each other but don't connect. Yeah, it's a little bit of spaghetti right there.
I just want to make sure that we've got the roads in our mind, because what's out there now is not ready for 608 automobiles. And I went kind of easy with 2 vehicles per house, because we know that number could be a lot higher. So I just want to make sure that as the developer gets involved with Lawrence, that we stay involved with them and make sure that we're getting adequate roadways out there.
The other stage of the process too is actually preliminary plating and final plating.
Correct.
And where needed, we will request that a traffic analysis be done to analyze whether we are moving that volume of traffic. It certainly is more than 2 cars per home. Average daily traffic on a single family home is substantially more than the 2 vehicles, because there's more than 2 vehicles at home, and then you have to account for visitors, and you have to account for multiple trips per day. So yeah, we have to plan for that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Petty?
So the developer spoke earlier, and I was just curious, and I don't know who's the best person to answer this question, but what is the time frame for development, given that, and I share Jeff's concern about, concern about the roads. Is there any expectation that a developer contributes towards ingress, egress, getting in and out? I mean, you build this beautiful development, but how do you get there, right? Is there, there's an older map, which you haven't flashed up yet, but it's very clearly outlined on the original development that they submitted to Pinal County that there are roads, major roads, running through this development, and I'm assuming that that's no longer part of the plan?
That particular master plan, it just got broken up quite a bit, and and it ended up being not a master planned community. So what we envision with Arizona Farms, when you have a master developer doing things, they're basically running the show. And that's where we're extremely fortunate with Pulte and Anthem at Merrill Ranch. When you work in that environment, it's easy to keep the master plan together. When you start busting it up into, a variety of ownership and everybody, is concerned about their piece or that piece and the other piece, and it's not connected anymore, it's not really a master plan anymore. It's a little bit of chaos, quite frankly. So, time frame on all these projects, I would anticipate that probably, you could say, well, the time frame is contingent upon the market, but I think if the home building market were to come back fairly strong, I think the first place probably that they're going to gravitate towards is those finished lots that are in the Magic Ranch community or in the Crestfield Manor community. There's hundreds of, in fact, north of in the community where I think most of the folks live in Iron Horse. There's one owner, an entity that owns 399 finished undeveloped lots. So as soon as that switch clicks and all of a sudden home building starts up again, they could go in there and immediately start going vertical on homes. And so there is a scenario where you could have instant growth occurring in parts of Magic Ranch. D.R. Horton also has a few lots left. And then in Crestfield Manor, there's a substantial number of lots. Home builders can come in and just go gangbusters right away. The stuff like this and Arizona Farms and the other sites, they still have a lot of engineering to go through, a lot of preliminary plats, a lot of final plats, a lot of figuring out the infrastructure, how the water and sewer works, development of the infrastructure. So they're still a few years off from anything happening, and that would be really only if there is a resemblance of a market again. We saw it kind of start to come back, but it's been kind of stagnant again lately.
Any further questions? If I have no further questions, I will take a motion on case number PZC 20-14-PUD, Ashburn at Magic Ranch.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, case PZC 20-14, PUD, Ashburn at Magic Ranch. Recommend approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion on the table to forward a favorable recommendation to the Town Council on case number PZC 20-14-PUD, the Ashburn at Magic Ranch project. The motion this evening was made by Commissioner Pranzo, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please forward a favorable recommendation on this case to the Town Council.
Thank you.
All right. Next case is going to be 5D. This is case number PZC 21-14-PUD, Lookout Mountain number 2. This is a presentation, discussion, and recommendation of a request by the Town of Florence on behalf of the Arizona State Land Department to change the existing zoning on approximately 320 acres from single residential ranchette R1-R to planned urban development PUD. The Lookout Mountain 2 PUD process underlining zone of multifamily residential and highway business commercial B2 on this property, which is generally located south of Arizona Farms Road, east and adjacent to the Gila Indian Reservoir community, and west of the Union Pacific Railroad. This subject site is also bisected by Hunt Highway. This case is contingent upon the annexation of the property into the Town of Florence per pending annexation 2013-1.
Chair, members of the Commission. Well, I think maybe a couple of you might have been on the Planning Commission when we worked with the State Land Department. I think started having discussions with them about all their parcels of land that they owned within our planning area back in 2007, 2008 or so. And also at that time, we were talking about all the state land that makes up Superstition Vistas, the 275 square miles. The town was fairly proactive in including a lot of the Superstition Vistas land in our general plan back then in the 2007-2008 period. And the state land department and the other neighboring communities started getting very concerned about that. And it was decided amongst the various communities, okay, well, we'll let Superstition Vistas kind of not be split up amongst the various communities, but stay in the county until it's master plan, until we figure out exactly what's going to happen with that. But part of the negotiation with that was that we said, well, we'll back off of Superstition Vistas, but all these other pieces that are of state land that we have within our community, they're either islands or they're on the outskirts attached to the town, but are preventing us from further growth in certain areas. And it was agreed upon at that time that they would work with us to allow about 7 or 8 parcels to be annexed into the town of Florence. And that's a substantially difficult, long, drawn-out process. The first step of that process was that they identified the land uses that they desired for all of those parcels. And in 2009, the general plan was amended through the usual public process that it is, like you're talking about tonight, to reflect those amendments. And actually in 2010, the proposed land uses, the land uses for all the state land parcels within our planning area, they were on the land use map that went to the voters of the town of Florence in 2010. And the voters of the town of Florence approved the general plan that included the land use map and also included the designations on all those state land pieces. Well, the next step after the general plan land use designation process was to enter into a development agreement, or essentially a contract with the Arizona State Land Department that ultimately would have to go to the state selection board, which is headed up by the governor of the state. And that was a long process to go through that negotiation of developing the development, putting the development agreement together, ultimately to a point where it was satisfactory to the state land department, and then the selection board. Again, the selection board is, that you go to is headed by the governor, and also had the treasurer and the state attorney general making up that board. So it was a very lengthy, challenging, difficult process. Part of why that is so is that, as I think you all know, is that the town of Florence has no jurisdiction on state land. So, and you know, I know that's been an issue that's come up on something else within the community, but on all these other pieces that weren't really as controversial as the other one, the state was very clear about what their expectations were on all of these pieces of land. They identify the land uses and address circulation, and then in the development agreement, it made it very clear what the expectations were of how what we were to do if the properties are to be annexed. So the end result on all the other pieces were ultimately annexed into the town of Florence successfully. This piece could not come in initially because it's connected by private land that's part of the Magic Ranch annexation, and so this one is kind of stalled out there for a little bit. And then the piece of state land that was within Merrill Ranch, that was extracted right about the time that Curis acquired that property, I believe. So again, these are oriented this way just because they look a little scrunched up if you put them portrait style. But the plan that the State Land Department wanted on this property was to have the opportunity for commercial along the Hunt Highway corridor and commercial along the Arizona Farms corridor, and multifamily uses in between. And in order to annex the property, that was the only that was the only configuration, the only land use that they would consider. Now we get to this point today, and what do we have in place? Well, we have a general plan amendment that was approved, and then a general plan that was approved by the voters that show this property as having a commercial and high-density residential land use designation on it, and we have a contract with the State Land Department that says that the only way that you can continue to process an annexation on this property is if you get this zoning. So I know there's been concerns. I think you're going to hear concerns. You've already heard some concerns about this one tonight. I have to tell you, in this particular case with the State Land Department, you know, the town of Florence has no jurisdiction on this piece of property other than what was contractually agreed upon in that agreement. And also, when we rezone a property, it has to be consistent with the general plan. By law, it has to be consistent. And this zoning is consistent with the general plan. So you have, I don't know that there's a lot of other opportunities here on this property other than to look at the zoning on the property this way, and try to complete the annexation. I believe that if the State Land Department, if the State Land Department were not to get this zoning on the property, we would be in violation, I believe, well, with great certainty, we would be in violation of the agreement, and I suspect that the State Land Department would challenge the annexation, and it would be voided, because we cannot bring the State Land Department out into the town of Florence without their consent. We don't have that jurisdiction. It doesn't even, it goes beyond the 51% formula that we talked about. You cannot annex state land without their consent. So this goes back to 2008, a lot of meetings, public vote of the general plan in 2009, a council process of adopting the development agreement. So a lot of this stuff happened. The reason that you're seeing here tonight is not because it's trying to sneak in the back door or anything. You're seeing these cases here tonight because this is the closest that the town of Florence has come on pursuing these annexations, and it's all kind of coming to a head. We're going to find out whether the annexations whether they fail or whether they're successful in just over a month from now. And asked the State Land Department if they could come to the meeting tonight, and they weren't available to attend unless that's changed. But I did suggest that they be here tonight, and then suggested if they're not here tonight that they could please attend the council meeting, because I think having that perspective of what their constitutional mandate is important to hear. That they have to put the highest and best, what they believe to be the highest and best use on the property, and the highest and obtain the highest return on the property ultimately when it's developed, because they are representing the trust that is underlying on the property. So the money from the sale of the property ultimately, or the lease of the property, will go to the trust, which oftentimes is public schools. The other thing to note on this property, though, we talked about the market and when pieces of property are going to develop, but if this were to be consistent with how you see state land auctioned and developed in other parts of the state, this is a long ways off. Again, going back to their constitutional mandate and looking to increase value, they're going to sit on this and sit on this and sit on this and wait for development to be really ripe, extremely ripe in this area, to wait for there to be demand for the commercial and the multifamily. They're not going to rush out there and build this anytime soon. Most of the land that is between Arizona Farms and the Johnson Ranch area, all around Copper Basin, most of that undeveloped land that you see all of, from us to Queen Creek, it's state land. There's plenty of ripe state land before you even come down to this particular area. So there would be no anticipation that the property would develop anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing, but before I open the public hearing, I just want to remind you all, I am limiting each person to 3 minutes, because obviously this is the big case tonight. I'm going to limit it, each person to 3 minutes. If you have a group that's all going to get up and say the same thing, please elect a spokesperson to get up and say it. We'd love to hear from everybody, but we don't need to hear that same thing 50 times. Okay? So if you're all going to say the same thing, let's get one person to say, hey, I'm speaking for these 10 people over here. Okay? With that, I'm going to open up case number PZC 21-14 PUD, Lookout Mountain 2. Do I have anybody from the public that would like to speak on this case? Please state your name and address again for the record.
Phil Hollins, 25374 North Poseidon Road, Florence, Arizona. I have one question first for him. Let's see. Is there any other planning in the town that you wish to designate as multifamily residential?
Mark?
That's my...
Chair, members of the commission, if you'd like me to respond to that, yes.
Okay. Okay, like I said, my name is Phil Hollins. As I see the zoning issue, the important question that continues to come to my mind, why? For example, knowing that the land in Arizona Farm and Highway is zoned for single ranch residential, why would Florence attempt to change our identity from a tranquil community to a zoning that brings heavy transient traffic? Would be a statistical hotbed for crime and located at the farthest corner away from the old town. Is it to punish the folks from Magic Ranch community who are not fully supporting of the annexation? Or is it because the town can create the highest tax zone by bunching the most people in the smallest amount of space so they can maximize the revenue for road tax, property tax, sales tax, possible federal tax breaks while bringing our resale value of our homes down? Why would Florence then attempt to change the two already designated high-density residential locations at Arizona Farms and Felix for a favorable zoning for the master plan community? And there are even plans for districts. Are there even plans for the districts where the town council members live in or oversee to be zoned as multifamily residential complexes? Is it because they know that these apartment complexes can eventually be declared for Section 8, or they will most likely become breeding grounds for criminal activity? Or is it because the recent luxury apartment experiment in Queen Creek miserably failed to gain interest, ended up being leased to Section 8 as required by law, and then required law enforcement responses continually around the clock? Or could it be because they simply don't want those type of problems in their communities? Also, why would the town of Florence leadership wait until after they've collected a large sum of signatures to decide to try to drastically rezone our areas within 300 feet of our homes, if they've known about this for, I guess we talked about, what, 10, 15 years? Maybe it's because they knew that the zoning would have a drastic impact on their ability to get the 51% annexation. Or did they just not realize 8 months ago that when they were considering the change for zoning? Since the town leadership preached transparency and sincerity 8 months ago, why would they only provide the homeowners that are on the back side of the houses? 30 seconds now?
You got 10 seconds left.
Okay. All right. Well, basically what I'm saying is that something just doesn't seem right here, okay? So that's just my point. I don't know how to better say it.
Thank you. Go ahead and state your name and address again for the record, please.
Aaron Fuller, 5493 East Demeter Drive, Florence, Arizona. When I bought my house, I bought it about 1.5 years ago. I was told by the realtors that this is state land and won't be developed. One of the biggest selling points was that I have a nice view, and in fact, I live in the Magic Ranch Iron Horse, just right there, right in the smack in the middle of it on the westernmost boundary. I overlook this every day, get up at 5 in the morning, beautiful stallion out there every morning. This is a little bit overreaching to try to annex it and then zone it, high density. We've got, a good ecosystem out there. This type of land borders the Indian community that's not going to be developed. We're going to have, I just believe that State-owned is better in this situation just because it won't be developed. I think that if you amend your zoning to not include this parcel, that would actually be a better avenue for us. I mean, it'll also, not only you can see the turnout that you have, I don't know how often you've had a turnout this size, but you can see that it's actually agitated a good portion of this community. This is one of your highest valued land parcels right next to it, and you're going to put one of your, you know, I'm just sorry to say it, but lower income type residences right next to it, which is going to, any offset that you bring with higher density, you're going to offset with lower values on the other side. So, and I'm the first to admit, I mean, I'm a civil engineer. I actually profit off of other people or developments, and I've been on both sides of the case, on public and private side. I'm all for development, however, not in this situation. So please forward a disapproval on your recommendation.
Thank you.
Hi, Keith Bray, 5651 East Helios Drive, Magic Ranch Iron Horse. I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification. I've already expressed my objection to this development for all the reasons that are going to be stated by other people, I'm sure. The gentleman on the end next, if I understand correctly, were you saying that this request to change this zoning came from the state development? And if so, are you saying that you really have no say in it, that what the state say they want it to be is what it's going to be?
Chair, members of the Commission, again, the municipalities have no zoning authority over the State Land Department and no capacity to annex them without their consent. The land use that they identified that they required for this property to be annexed is the HDR and community commercial, which would translate to the zoning that you see on the property today. So the general plan was amended, the general plan went to the voters, and there was a development agreement that was adopted by resolution. The state adopted the agreement, the town of Florence adopted the agreement, and that's, so those things have been in place since 2009, 2010. If anybody were to look at the general plan land use map, this piece of property has not changed since the year prior to the plan going to a vote, and certainly since the plan was adopted by the voters. It's been the same land use designation on our plan. If anyone was doing due diligence and wanted to be concerned about what's going on around them, you know, that's out there. State land, if they can help it, all state land, I mean, there will be no state land piece that would ever not be developed. Okay, that's the whole principle of the State Land Department, is to get the highest, to develop all their land, all their assets, and get the highest return possible from them. But the state of Arizona has a substantial amount of land that's in the state trust, so it probably would be unlikely that all of it would be developed, and particularly in the areas that are in the mountains are completely inaccessible. But the pieces of state land like this, and all around Copper Basin, and around the magma junction that we talked about before, all these pieces of state land are going to be developed. And they can do it two ways. They can do it by basically dictating, you know, what's going to occur in the county, or they can do it by, you know, entering into an agreement with a municipality to be annexed and develop the property. So I guess the decision is, you know, we're not saying that you and ultimately the council have to approve the zoning for the property. What we are trying to establish is that the zoning is consistent with the general plan. So by that virtue, there really is no legal grounds to deny it, because the zoning is consistent with the general plan. It's a straightforward zoning application. Two is, if the property is to be annexed, we have a contractual obligation with the State Land Department that they obtain the zoning that they've indicated. If they don't obtain that zoning, and you have every right, and the council have every right to not approve the zoning, but the consequence of that is likely going to be that the annexation doesn't succeed. And it may not succeed for other reasons. We don't know for sure whether it's going to pass or fail. But then assuming that the annexation fails, whether because of this issue or just because of the collection of signatures or evaluation, the town of Florence will then look for other opportunities to continue to grow out in this area and assemble annexations that hopefully would be successful. It would still be our hope to continue to grow northward. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. I think we're very concerned, and we've talked about it all night, about what has happened out here from Santan Valley to around Magic Ranch. We can do better than that, and I think we can improve upon things. But we may not have that opportunity if we're not successful with the annexation.
Thank you. Again, I would just like to express my objection to the approval of this rezoning application, and if it means the annexation doesn't go ahead, so be it. I'm sure 40% of the people that voted in favour of annexation, probably 20% of that 50% of that 40 would rescind their approval of annexation had this been put on the notification about the annexation in the first place. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Johnny Vargas. I live at 5632 Artemis Road, or Drive, excuse me. I moved here from Puerto Rico, high crime area. My wife did research to see where we wanted to live in Arizona. Florence was the place, low crime. We decided to buy a house here because a lot of the people who are there are either professional or retired. So it's nice and quiet, wonderful neighborhood. I can't even imagine, excuse me, I'm a little nervous here. I can't even imagine having an apartment complex anywhere near our development. I think that would bring crime. The people who bought houses here didn't buy it with the intent of thinking, wow, I'm buying this house, this is a nice neighborhood, I'm going to have a high-rise building over here with all kinds of crime, with all kinds of people who are not, who don't have the same stake in the area where we live as we do. Had I known this, I would not have bought a house here. I was happy to live here in Florence. Now, because of all of this development, I'm talking to my wife saying, hey, I think we need to leave this place. I work in Florence. I used to drive to Phoenix. People used to always tell me, well, why would you live all the way in Florence and you drive to Phoenix every day? And I used to tell them, because as soon as I get out of Phoenix, it's like this weight comes off of me. And the closer I get past Mesa and the closer I get to Florence, there's this peace about this place. And this whole thing here is disturbing that peace. So I don't have nothing to gain like these gentlemen here as far as money, but I do have everything to lose because my home sits right where they're talking, and I just don't see anything good coming out of this. So I know I voted for annexation because I am proud to live in the town of Florence, but as it is right now, me and my wife are talking about taking our names back off, because had we known this from the beginning, we would have never signed. Matter of fact, I would have probably been on the knocking on people's doors and explaining to them that after spending our hard-earned money and you know, this community that we're so proud to live in is now could possibly, because we don't know what could happen, but could possibly become one of those communities where now we got just all kinds of activities that we moved away from, okay? So if I wanted to live like, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but if I wanted to live in Mesa, I would have bought a house in Mesa. But I bought a house here, and there's a reason why I bought a house here.
My name is Anne Marie Rakoski. I live at 5773 East Artemis Drive, Magic Ranch. I have a few questions. When, if everything goes through and whatever, when would the proposed building of these multi-unit multifamily houses start being built? Would you be able to answer that?
Chair, members of the commission, State Land Department is not a development entity. So the first process before development would be that they would auction the land, but there would have to be substantial interest in this area and other land, and any market and a high return expected to put the property up for auction. If they put it up for auction and they don't feel like they're going to get enough out of that, or there's no bidders, they're going to go back and just sitting idle on the land. Again, as I stated before, you know, there's no certainty when they would auction it. There's no certainty when they would develop it. But the substantial amount of state land that is still within, you know, urban areas within Phoenix and within Mesa, even, and particularly all throughout Santan Valley, they're just, you know, State Land Department has not expressed any urgency whatsoever to auction off any land for development anywhere in this area. So there's no time frame.
Thank you.
So you wouldn't know how many there would be because of everything you just stated? Correct?
Go ahead.
As far as the schedule of the development, no, there's no. The zoning would allow the opportunity for the commercial to be built along Hunt Highway and Arizona Farms, and multifamily in between. We don't know the nature of what that commercial development would be. We don't know whether the multifamily would be single-family attached homes or duplexes or triplexes or condominiums or townhomes or apartments. We know that it would be multifamily. We know that there would be a commercial component. But again, I wouldn't expect this property to be developed anywhere near in the future whatsoever. There's plenty more properties, whether they're private land or state land, that are much more ripe for development than this particular one.
Thank you. I'd like to say that I haven't been here that long. I'm a new resident to this state. I've only been here about 6 months, and we looked everywhere when we were buying a home, and this particular place was the best fit for us, mainly because of the quietness, being away from the big city, and now we find, as many others have said, that these things are being proposed right in our backyard, and I join with many others that we're not happy, our family is not happy, and we register our, if I can say, vote of turning this proposal down. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
I'm Charles Smith. I live at 5492 East Athena Road. Your name again, sir?
My name is Mark.
Okay. And whom are you all together again for us? Because I'm sure we've gotten lost in the picture who you are.
Oh, okay, sure, gladly. Chair, members of the commission, Mark Eckhoff, Community Development Director, Town of Florence.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. My concerns are generally just like everybody else. Generally speaking, we feel, or I feel in particular, that the town and the developers have no interest in us, whom are residents, next to this state trust. Most of us have moved there, and reiterating what some of them already said, is that because we like the peace and the quietness, and we knew what we were getting then. Now, we're assuming, or we have enlightened, or have been enlightened, that all of this is coming down the pipe here. But when the original process of annexation occurred, we weren't given as much information as we thought we should have had. We've always thought that as well, too. Vis-a-vis, here we are with the idea of rezoning the area behind my property. And we're not pleased with the fact that because by law that only within 300 feet are people advised of this rezoning. It doesn't take care of the rest of the residents. Okay. Prior to all this annexation, there were reports done, and we're doing our research after all of this annexation question coming up and the zoning as well too. And so we've looked at the fiscal impact, cost and benefits analysis. We've seen the report to the mayor and the council of the town of Florence on the proposal Magic Ranch and Arizona Farms annexation. We've also looked at the passenger rail study, that is the Tucson to Phoenix. And we've looked at the Planning and Zoning Commission staff report as well too. It all points to us that no information was brought forward until now, especially all of these items that I'm speaking of. So we're saying the timeliness is absurd. We should have known about all of this at the time you invented or at the advent of this. And we are questioning who are all these excited people about this annexation and this rezoning. I think not us. And we're just soundly disheartened about all of this because we've not known about this until now. So we would move that, or I myself particularly, do not approve of this rezoning.
Thank you, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Woody Rass. Address is 25304 North Poseidon Road. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but some things that you brought up. First of all, thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for letting us be here tonight and speak out. First, I'd like to echo also that I am in favor of what the residents are talking about. I do live with our back porch against the state land, and that's one of the selling points that the realtor had mentioned also. The other thing is, on the plan earlier before, you had stated that there was commercial property supposedly up against Arizona Farms Road. As the chairman pointed out, on the other residents on the east side of the railroad tracks, has there been a traffic study for that major arterial road that will associate all the traffic associated with that commercial property going in and out on a two-lane road? I don't think it has been, which is something that I would say that would express objection for this rezoning from an R1R to a PDU. Other than that, I would express my objection again and not approve the rezoning on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any further public? Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is John Danico. My address is 5597 East Dionysus Drive. First, I would like to thank Mark for faithfully representing the position of the Arizona State Land Trust and how that process worked. I spent the last 24 hours digging pretty substantially into how this whole process works. My question is a couple of questions, is why didn't the town of Florence, in their presentation about the annexation that was directly impacting all the citizens here, clearly and without demurring the facts of what you guys had in mind? Why was that choice made?
Sir, we can only listen to you. We can't dialogue with you during the public hearing.
Okay, so that's one question. The other thing is does the entire annexation fail if this parcel of land is not brought into conformity with the town plan? Or is just this piece of ground not become part of the annexation? In other words, can it just sit there and wait till the state chooses to do something with it?
Well, Chair, members of the commission, I guess I'm going to repeat myself, but I apologize for that. But just to add a clarity, the general plan is the guiding tool for a zone change. And number one, you have that component. Number two, you have a contractual obligation adopted by resolution. If the property is going to be annexed, it would have to obtain such zoning. If the property is not
Pardon me,
annexed,
sir, is the annexation you're talking about that parcel or the entire annexation of Iron Ranch or
well, Chair, members of the commission, may I finish
absolutely.
my response? Okay. There's two annexations going on, so we'll just, for the sake of this discussion, we won't talk about the Arizona Farms annexation. We'll focus on Magic Ranch. So the scenario in this annexation, which I have described, is that the general plan on this property could be anything. The comprehensive plan on this property in the county could be anything. It happens to be in our town to be a high-density residential community commercial. If we bring the property in for annexation and we zone it, the zoning has to be consistent with the general plan. Layered on top of that is the obligation set forth by virtue of the state selection board of the town council that if this property is annexed, it will obtain zoning consistent with the general plan. So the option, therefore, is if the town decides, well, we don't want to annex the property, we don't want to give it this zoning, the Magic Ranch annexation would fail. Because if we cannot bring in the state land piece without their consent. Their consent is only granted if we zone it consistent with the general plan and our obligation through that agreement with the state. So the annexation would just fail.
Again, I'm asking specifically the total annexation or the annexation of that parcel?
The Chair, members of the commission, the Magic Ranch annexation would fail. You cannot start splitting an annexation apart and think, well, it doesn't look like that piece is going to work, I'll cut that out, or we really like that, we'll keep that. It's a single annexation. It's one piece. It can fail because it doesn't have the proper number of owners. It can fail because it doesn't meet the requirement for value. This is another scenario where it could fail. Is that if the town decides that we're not going to zone the property in the way that's set forth, then the state land department is not going to consent to annexing the property. And this is attached to the rest of the Magic Ranch annexation. So therefore, this entire annexation would fail. And then the town, under the statutes, I believe there's a 45-day waiting period. The town can decide to file the same annexation or similar annexation, smaller annexations, annexations in a different configuration that could do a variety of things. So again, I just don't want to give anybody an impression that the commission and the council absolutely positively have no choice but to zone it a certain way. It's just that it would be the proper thing to do because it would be consistent with the plan, it would be consistent with the agreement that was entered into in good faith with the state land department. And as we've talked about the annexation, we've always presented all the land use plans, the plans for the freeway, and a lot of the interest in the annexation was always expressed in the opportunity ultimately to get some higher intensity land uses that would be generated because of having more of Hunt Highway, Arizona Farms, Felix Road, Attaway within the corporate limits of the town of Florence. So we have never been shy about talking about the potential of the land development that can occur out in this area because of those land uses, those corridors. That's never been hidden. Our general plan has always been part of the exhibits that have been indicated. That always had the high-density residential and the community commercial on it. So there's nothing been hidden. This is coming to a zoning action now because the annexation is getting close to that point where it's either going to sink or swim. So this process has to occur now. There was no reason to zone the property before there was any expectation of annexation.
Well, the further question that I have then is why wasn't this parcel of Lookout Mountain 2 brought up for zoning at the time when all the other parcels were. To us, it looks like you guys are springing this thing on me. I know it was part of your general plan. I've done the research now, okay? But it's contrary to the best practices that a town should be doing these annexations on. Okay? That we're supposed to like trust you guys now? This is the basis of a future relationship where we're like gung-ho for the town of Florence? It's going to ruin our trust, man. Hurts our hearts. Hurts our pocketbooks. Not cool, man.
Thank you very much, sir. Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your
Phil
name.
Hollins, 25374. Y'all can come over anytime and visit. But anyway, let's see. One thing about moving this community is that we used to see the horses run in the front, the beginning of our community. Can you go ahead and put that other slide up? Let's see, or can I do it here? I'm trying to find the rest of the first slide. The one where the property is behind us, the land. No, I think it's a little bit after that. No. We're talking about the property that's behind our homes. Oh, it's got to go back? Okay. That's not it, is it? Okay. Well, anyway, I don't want to waste time here. Basically, the horses used to run past our entrance of our community, okay? And then when further development started, that took away from the wild horses. And I think they belong to the Native American land, all right? Well, guess what? Those horses are now going at the bottom area, as Aaron had mentioned earlier. They're going at the bottom area, and they're staying in that state land. All right, so basically, if you start developing something that's high residential in that area, the horses are not going to have anywhere to go. All right, they're going to be stuck. And the thing is, they migrate every day across that particular area. And that's an issue for, I mean, like say you have people out there who really like animals and stuff. They like to see the horses. Like he said, he likes to watch them every morning, 5:30. So now we're looking at a possibility of injuring the migration process of these horses to build some high-density residential or larger homes. If it was ranch like it is designated now, then that doesn't really seem much of an issue because the horses can still move forward without having to deal with high traffic. But the thing is that we keep building and we're taking away from the animals, you know, the horses and stuff that are there. There's nowhere for them to continue to migrate. And is there an issue that that the reservation would have to deal with this when they're finding out that their horses are not able to migrate? So.
Thank you, sir.
Again, Charles Smith, 5492 East Athena Road, Iron Horse, Magic Ranch. Not all of Magic Ranch, just Iron Horse. My basic question, which is that we haven't heard exactly who is going to determine what this zoning will be. Is it us, the residents, or whom? We don't know exactly who has the final say. We've heard that the town of Florence voters decided to do this or do that or whatever, but of this zoning, you haven't specifically said who determines the change in zoning. And the question is also, too, does this zoning has to be changed before the town annexes us? That's all I have.
Thank you. State your name and address for the record, please.
Teresa Matthews, 5749 East Dionysus Drive, Iron Horse. I attended the meeting about 8 months ago and still find much of this that was not revealed or not revealed in language that we could understand. But if I understand it correctly, we are between a rock and a hard place. The state
will do what it wants to do with its land. My question is, what are the opportunities for citizens to participate at the state level department as they make decisions about this land? How does one access that committee?
With that question, ma'am, I'll actually have staff get with you later after the meeting because they can guide you in the right direction.
Okay.
Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? With the absence of the public, I'll close the public hearing and open it to the commission. I'm going to start first because I got all kinds of notes here. One of the things that I really want to talk to the public right now is to get you to understand that this commission's primary job tonight is to make sure that the zoning that's presented tonight to us is in conjunction with our general plan. That's our only job tonight, okay? So I don't want you guys to think that, annexation is not driven by this panel right here. Annexation is driven by you guys out there, okay? So I don't want it to become this cloudy issue where you guys think we're forcing something, okay? But one of the things that I want to talk about is Arizona State owns that land, correct? Now, there's two things that can happen. One, we can annex it and it becomes the town of Florence. The reason that we annex the way we do is because there's a thing that happened several years ago called Growing Smarter Arizona. Okay? Growing Smarter Arizona doesn't allow people like Mr. Eckhoff to go, well, I want this piece here, and I want this piece here, and I want this piece here, and just leave all this other stuff in between. We don't like what it looks like, that type of thing. It says that we have to annex in a certain way. Everything has to connect. You can no longer do what they call spot annexation. Okay? So really, the reason that we're going that direction is that's the way Florence wants to grow. We all, as a community, decided that years ago when we adopted that general plan, that that's the direction we want to go. So one option is we can all annex it and work together to make sure that whatever ends up on that property, let's just say 25, 30 years from now, makes everybody happy. Or what could happen is if it doesn't annex, the county gets to play with that land because unincorporated state land, the county gets to play with. Okay? So now you're setting a scenario, and nothing against Pinal County, but now you're definitely setting a scenario where the product that's going to go on that property could be a lot less controlled than if it was within city limits. Okay? So, annexation is driven by the people, not by a commission. It's actually driven by the people. So I just want to get you to understand that even if we agree with you tonight and say, you know what, no zoning, the county still gets rights to that land if the state decides to sell it. If they decide that, you know what, it's time that the trust dumps this land, boom, this is what we want, the county has to follow what the state says. So, sir, public hearing is closed. Once the public hearing is closed, I cannot address the public anymore. Okay? So, I'm not trying to create, sir, the public hearing is closed. Okay? I cannot address you at this time. Okay? What I'm trying to say is maybe the county will do something good with that land if the state sells it. Maybe Florence will. I'm just trying to get you guys to think that way, that ultimately this is state land. They can dump it into Florence city limits, and we can all work together to make it what everybody's happy with, or we can leave it to where it stays unincorporated, and there's large examples of bad unincorporated properties throughout Maricopa County, Pinal County, all kinds. So I just want you guys to think about that, okay? My next thing is Section 8 versus multifamily housing. I'm a resident of Florence. I've lived here for the better part of 18 years. When I moved here for the same reason most of you guys did. It's quiet. It's disconnected from the county, or Maricopa County. I moved here for the same reason. But I can tell you that 10 years ago, the state land was annexed behind my house to put up duplexes. Was I for it? No, I was totally against it. But 10 years later, I still have desert behind me. Nothing has been done with the land, okay? But the state decided to dump that land. Somebody purchased it. This is what they wanted to do, but there it sits, okay? So I just wanted to share that with you, that state does it all the time. They dump land, they pick up land, they shift land, and sometimes, like Mr. Eckhoff said, that land sits for decades before anything happens on that land. So, let's see, what else did I have? I think that's it. So, Mr. Pronzo, you have something?
Well, I think we've beat this horse to death. And what it comes out to, if I've listened correctly and not gotten confused, is the state has made up their mind what's going to happen with that land. Now, whether it's inside the city limits of Florence or it stays in the county, guess what? They've already made up their mind. Now, once that land sells and the developer buys it, the developer is going to have to abide by the zoning that the state has designated on that land. So, what it comes down to is, do you want to be part of Florence or not? Because that land is going to be what the state said it's going to be, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
So, there's no question. That's just a statement.
Mr. Petty?
I got one request for staff. If they, in the document, there's the hearings and what happens there. I was wondering if you could just say that out loud to let the people know the process, what happens with this, if it goes forward or not.
Sure, Chair, members of the Commission. The particular schedule on this case, when it goes to Council, it's set for the August 4th and August 11th Council meetings. August 11th is a special Council meeting. It's the second Monday, and August 4th is the first Monday. The first meeting would be a public hearing and a reading of the ordinance, and the second meeting would be the second reading of the ordinance and adoption. But again, the annexation items would go before this particular item, and should the annexation items not be successful, this would really become a moot point. And there was another question that came up before about contacting the State Land Department. State Land Department has a planning department where they master plan all of their land, and by all means, people are as free to contact the State Land Department as they are to contact our office or anyone in the town. They're still a governmental entity, but just keep in mind that the State Land Department is also one of the most unique components of the state government that we have, that they have the capacity to basically kind of operate within their own spectrum. I mean, they do things differently, and we don't have jurisdiction over them, and we do have an agreement. Talking to them, you know, if concerns are raised to them, maybe they would have suggestions. But certainly, I have no authority, and the town of Florence has no authority to be changing the plan on their property and saying what can or can be done on the state land, because there's only one thing that the State Land Department has consented for me on behalf of the town to present to you tonight, and that's this zoning. We have no other capacity.
And just so I understand the process, when the annexation goes through or doesn't go through, that will be before this item goes to town council, right?
Yes, Chair, members of the Commission. The August 4th and August 11th dates are actually the dates that we're looking at for the annexation items. So a bunch of items are going to end up at the council. There's going to be some general plan amendments that you have processed over the last few months that might they'll be coming up to council here soon, but the majority of the items are going to go to council related to the annexation are going to go on August 4th and August 11th. And we cannot finalize the zoning on any property before it is annexed. So we can do general plan amendments on property within our planning area that's not incorporated. We can enter into pre-annexation development agreements with properties before they're annexed. We cannot zone a property until it's annexed. We obviously can't do anything regarding development on a property before it's annexed.
And then, when this is heard after the annexation, so say the annexation is successful, and then the zoning changes that we're doing right now are heard, if those are not successful, that could invalidate the annexation.
That's an interesting scenario. If you got, again, on this annexation alone, if you got to the point where the signatures and petitions were there and everything was going smoothly, and we got to the last stage and council said, we're not going to give this property the zoning that the state has requested to be on this property. So you have an interesting scenario where even if the annexation were to continue to go through at that point, there's a 30-day challenge period of the annexation afterwards. And I can tell you with utmost certainty that the State Land Department would challenge the annexation. And I don't know what case that we would have, because we have an agreement that this is what is to occur. And I think maybe we're talking a lot about the legal process. Maybe the assistant town attorney would like to add some as well, if that's okay.
Good evening. I haven't met some of you. I'm Danielle Roberts. I'm the assistant town attorney. Just to speak to the legal matter, the town has a pre-annexation development agreement, which is a contract, and the laws of contract govern. And because I'm a lawyer, I have to talk to you about a statute. The statute governing this type of agreement is in Title IX. It's 9500.05. And one of the things that people seem to be very concerned about is notice, that there wasn't any, the town didn't provide proper notice as to what was eventually going to happen towards the conclusion of the annexation process. And this agreement has been recorded with the county recorder's office since 2009, I believe, several years. And in that statute, the 9500.05, Section D, it says, the municipality shall record a copy of the agreement with the county recorder of the county in which the property subject to the development agreement is located. And the recordation constitutes notice of the development agreement to all persons. Now, I know that's a legal thing, and but if the commission was concerned about proper notice, this agreement has been available and open to anyone and everyone, and it's unfortunate if people have received inaccurate information from realtors or friends or family, but the information was there. And the ultimate goal, the vision that the State Land Department had for this property that it owns and it can decide what it wants to do with, that vision and that goal was right there at the county recorder's office for anyone to see. So that's the legality of that part.
Ma'am, I have to remind you, you guys can only talk during the public hearing. Ms. Garcia?
I'd like to ask the town staff for a bit of clarification. Of course, we had to listen to a lot, and I will note that this is my first night up here as well, so I think that this is a complicated issue. I think it's fair to say it's a relatively complicated issue. What I'm up here looking at is the 2020 general plan, which I know you have on here because you skipped through it while you were looking for something else. I'm also looking at the request and the analysis that you put into our hands. The 2020 general plan, this plot of land very clearly marks as high density residential, correct?
With commercial along Hunt and commercial on the Arizona farms.
Right. And yet when I'm reading the analysis, and I'm just seeking some clarification here because I'm a little confused, it says the applicant is requesting a zone change for the entire site from single residential to planned unit development zoning. So as Ms. Roberts said, this agreement has apparently been on record for quite some time, but I guess in what format was it? Was it as high-density residential, or was it, as it's stated here, as single residential ranchette? That's where my confusion is right now.
Okay. Let me try to clarify that for you if I could, Chair, members of the Commission. So the property in the county, it's just straight general rural, like almost all of Pinal County is, outside of areas like Santan Valley and highly developed areas. So when it comes in, the comparable zoning by law, again, is the R1R, I believe, that gets applied quickly to the property, and then it's replaced by the PUD. So we are able to do a general plan amendment on property prior to annexation. So the general plan was changed roughly around 2008, 2009, went to the voters in 2010. The town of Florence, on behalf of the State Land Department, we have that land use identified on the property, high-density residential, community commercial. But that's only in the event that the property is annexed. If it's not annexed, it stays in the county and it continues to be zoned general rural or until they decide, well, we're going to pursue this same plan in the county, and they can do whatever they want. If they want multifamily, they'll get multifamily. If they want commercial, they'll get commercial. So, so the general plan was changed, and concurrently with that, the town of Florence and the State Land Department negotiated that agreement that, well, if you are going to annex this property, it's going to have to be zoned consistent with the general plan and with the agreement. If we don't annex it, it's going to, the general plan is not changing. The general plan is still going to be that it's commercial and high-density residential. So if we took the property out today and didn't annex it, the general plan doesn't change. At some point, the State Land Department could come back again and say, well, I want to try to annex the property again, and I still want the zoning that I have the right to pursue under the general plan. Or the State Land Department could go to the county and say, I wasn't able to develop my property in the town because I couldn't get it annexed. Now I want to develop it in the county with multifamily. So there's multiple layers going on here, but you have the general plan and the public vote on the general plan. It was a pretty, it was pretty, widely advertised, advanced public process. I know ultimately only folks that were living in the town at that point could vote on the town of Florence general plan, but it was a public process, and that land use map has been on our website and been in every presentation where we've ever talked about anything regarding, doing anything out in this area. It's always, that land use plan has always been described.
And how long has this land use plan been out there and published? The one that I'm looking at that marks this property as high density.
Oh, also since that land use plan that you see, the drawing with the high density and the commercial, was done as part of the agreement with the State Land Department in 2009. So you have both of those things being out there since at least 2009. I think the land use plan was first modified before that in 2008. But clearly, publicly available resources on those if you were to do due diligence. Now, a lot of folks do, this happens over and over and over again, unfortunately, that sometimes when people buy a lot adjacent to undeveloped land, especially if it's state land, they'll look at it like it's perpetual open space, and it's clearly not. State land, I would never look at a piece of state land as open space. That's not their constitutional mandate whatsoever. Where they can develop land, they're going to develop land. If they can't develop it in the town of Florence, at some point they'll develop it in Pinal County, as the other commissioner indicated. So I hope somewhere in there.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you. So, as Chairman Woolley pointed out, as our job is zoning is plan, there is not much more than we can do than approve it if this is consistent with the general plan, which it appears to do via the map that I have in my hand. I want to ask another question regarding the future, because Chairman Woolley did talk about the amount of control that Florence may have over this property. Can you expound on that a little bit, like going down, planning ahead, let's say it's 10 years, let's say it's 15, 20 years, and some plan, such as some of the ones that we've already seen tonight, comes before this Planning and Zoning Commission or before the town of Florence, how much control do we have over that piece of property at that time?
In regards to the state, in regards to state land?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the one,
It has been annexed into the town.
the one state land that's not annexed in the town of Florence, our only control is to go through a public process, you know, a comment period if there happens to be one through the state land department, if they're seeking water or they need environmental permits, to go through the public process of trying to have a say on state land. But when it comes to zoning authority, unless they give us jurisdiction regarding zoning, we have no jurisdiction on zoning on the state land.
And that's when it has been annexed.
Yes. So any state land that is within the town, there's been this process to go through where the state consented to that annexation and said, well, you know, this is the zoning that I want to obtain on my property if I'm going to be annexed. So the valuable thing, I think, with this property and the other 6 or 7 that came in under this agreement recently is that that development agreement, it is, as the Assistant Town Attorney said, it's a contract between the parties. So when you bring this property in, now it's just not, well, we have to be afraid that the state land might do anything out of the blue on this property. No, they've consented to agree that this is what they're going to do on the property, unless now we mutually decide to amend that agreement. So if they were to have a buyer that said, no, there's no market for a multifamily out here for ages, and really it's not a high likelihood that multifamily is going to pop up on this property anytime soon. The market really in this area is probably single family for the near-term future. So if all these other properties started taking off and a home builder goes to the state and says, you know, man, I love that 320 acres, I'd love to do single family on that. Well, now they would have to then negotiate the contract with us to allow that change to occur, and then also the general plan would have to change and the zoning would have to change. So with that contract, though, you have some certainty of what occurs. In the county, when you have this property, anything could happen because they're not subject to county zoning, and they don't have that agreement in place.
Thank you.
Mr. Pranzo, anything else?
No, I've had all my questions answered.
I just want to make sure I covered everything on my side.
Commissioners?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't believe I fully answered your question about what happens with a challenge. Because we would be in breach of contract if we do not adopt the zoning that the state requires of the property. Mr. Eckhoff is correct. Surely if we didn't adopt that, assuming everything else with the annexation went smoothly, they would issue a challenge. The challenge would succeed or fail based on the value of that land. I don't know what that is. But I did just want to point out that should they mount a challenge, and should that challenge be successful, the town of Florence would be responsible for any attorney's fees and costs relating to that action, because we would be the party that would be in breach of that contract.
Thank you. I think I'm trying to put into words how I want to say this. I know what I want to say, I just want to say it right. Again, I want to, Ms. Garcia said, this is a state-controlled issue. We're at a point where we have to make a decision to support annexation of the whole project, not just that one piece. It's the whole project. And we have to look at the state mandate on that state land. My concern is, I want you guys to understand that if we approve this zone change tonight, they don't build out there tomorrow. There's still a whole nother process that they have to go before they can even touch the dirt out there. They have to go through preliminary plats, final plats. There's all these different things. It has to go before the town engineer. It has to go before planning and zoning. That's where you guys should be getting involved. That's where we, the town staff, the commission, the council, the communities work together so that whatever does build there, whenever it does, it makes you guys happy. That's the way developers work. Very rarely, I'm going to use Anthem as a prime example, okay? There was a lot of issues from a lot of the rural people that live up around Anthem before it built, and their voices were heard. And the product that you see today was an agreement amongst a lot of people, okay? So I want you to understand that just because if a zone change went through tonight, it doesn't mean they build tomorrow. There's a long process that they have to go through. There's more public hearings in front of us. There's more public hearings in front of the town council. And those are all, again, chances for you guys to make aware, well, you know what? Okay, we don't like that 75-foot wall they're putting up. That 75-foot wall needs to go away. I'm just using that as an example. So I just want you to understand that the annexation is really a bigger picture. We're dealing with the state land, yes, but it's just a zoning change to make it in conjunction with what the state and the general plan says so that we can move forward together as a town, including you guys, and take that next step, whenever it may be. It could be 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. We just don't know that right now. So, okay, do I have anything else from the commission? Okay, with that, I'll obtain a motion.
You want me to do it?
Somebody.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend for approval to council, case PZC 2114 PUD, Lookout Mountain 2.
I'll second that.
I have a motion on the floor to approve case number, correction. I have a motion on the floor to forward a favorable recommendation to the town council, PZC 21-14-PUD, Long Mountain 2. The motion tonight was made by Commissioner Pranzo. It was seconded by Commissioner Petty. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please forward a favorable recommendation to the town council.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mark.
No taxation without representation. Unfair, unjust.
Okay, next case for this evening is going to be case number 5E. This is case number PZC GPA North-South ADOT Freeway Corridor. Presentation, discussion, recommendation of a request by the Town of Florence for a minor general plan amendment to the Town of Florence 2020 General Plan. More specifically, this application requests an amendment to the Town of Florence 2020 General Plan future land use map contained within the land use element to adjust the town's conceptual alignment of the proposed north-south ADOT freeway corridor, as well as the proposed conceptual alignment of the ADOT passenger rail corridor based upon information collected and analyzed completed since the adoption of the 2020 general plan in 2010 and subsequent amendments. This change may have some result changes to the supporting road networks, including potential roadway changes. Who's got this one?
Chair, members of the commission, if I could just have could we take a 1 minute, 2 minute recess?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
We're now in recess, 5 minutes. Okay, at this time, we're going to come out of recess. We left off with case number PZC 24-14, General Plan Amendment. This is the north-south ADOT Freeway Corridor. Does somebody have a presentation for that one?
Chair, members of the commission, I'll make this fairly quick, I think. You can see on the map here, you have a land use plan that represents, again, the land uses within the town of Florence, but more specifically what I want to attract your attention to is the curving line going through the middle, which represents what ultimately will become the north-south ADOT freeway. And I think some of you recall that since 2007, 2008, we decided to be proactive in the town of Florence to start helping ADOT get the proper direction from our community, our stakeholders, landowners, developers, and so forth, of where this corridor needs to go within the town. So it was laid out on the general plan land use map, and we've been back to you and the council a few times since then, updating that. This is the most recent version that you have, and you can see it's kind of thick in some areas because there was some uncertainty about which, like in the case where it's really thick, of whether it was going to be south of the CIP canal or potentially go north and cross back. Well, a lot of those discussions have occurred that have allowed us to narrow this conceptual corridor to this configuration. And so if I kind of go back and forth, you can see that it's still falling in the same area. What we've done is to narrow it, and then also we've added language that clarifies the town's position that the north-south corridor, ultimately when it's developed, is a multimodal corridor, and if there is ever passenger rail, commuter rail, we would concurrently plan for this corridor to be both the passenger rail corridor and the ADOT north-south freeway corridor. And that language is clarified in this amendment. The corridor width has been narrowed. It's still conceptual. It still could go off of this corridor if ADOT desired it to. But what we've found is throughout this process, several-year process so far, working with ADOT, is that we've been providing a great assistance to them and by helping to thread the corridor through the community. And I do believe that either at the end of this year or beginning of next year, they plan to kind of roll out a status update of where they are on that particular project. There's also conceptual interchanges that are identified on the plan here. The other thing to note is this is the latest map of the passenger rail corridor, and there's 3 options that are on the table. So now we have to remember passenger rail, they're looking at a scenario of at least 2040. It's probably beyond that. So the first thing is developing some type of roadway corridor, expanding that roadway corridor, and then ultimately the demand over time will exist for passenger rail service. ADOT has these options here for the passenger rail. Green is on US Interstate 10. Yellow is generally following the Union Pacific Railroad, and the orange is generally following wherever the north-south corridor alignment is going to end up. As they get to I-10 in Eloy, they generally follow, they're generally along the I-10 corridor, and then as they get to the Phoenix metropolitan area, to the greatest extent possible, all these scenarios still try to follow rail corridors or existing highway corridors, such as the 60 or Grand Avenue or things like that. So all we've done is just take it one step further here again this year to try and move this project along, so that, you know, and part of this process and part of why we're doing this is, one, because we have properties like the Arizona Farms that we saw tonight where they're impacted by that, and we're trying to fine-tune where that's going to occur so they don't just have this swath of corridor going over their entire property. Merrill Ranch, they've agreed that it's not going to be crossing the cap. It was too costly to cross the cap twice in that area. So they've agreed, they've acknowledged that it's going to fall on the north part of the Merrill Ranch property. So we're trying to hug the cap canal as much as possible. The other important thing is that the alternative alignment that's out there right now in the ADOT study would bring the corridor further to in the middle part of town. It would bring it close to where that SRP corridor is, that kind of the dividing line really between Anthem and Merrill Ranch, and it brings it too far west. And what happens is, not only does that impact a lot of development that will be in there long before this occurs, but it also will bring both the freeway access and ultimately the rail access way too far west of town to have any benefit to the downtown in our central employment area. So that's another reason why we keep nudging this along, to see if we can bring it close to downtown. And the downtown stop that's envisioned, or the interchange that's envisioned, is on Butte Road, just west of Plant. So, but you're going to find that, you know, if not every year, every 2 years or every 3 years, we're going to be back trying to keep refining it, and getting it down ultimately to the 400-foot wide corridor that's envisioned. At some point, we'll get it to a very specific line, and it'll be less conceptual than this. And the rest of the information is provided in your report. I'd be happy to address any questions, and it is a public hearing.
Okay, let me do the public hearing first, and then we'll open up for questions. All right, this time I'm going to open up the public hearing for case number PZC 22-14, General Plan Amendment, North-South ADOT Freeway Corridor. Public hearing is now open. Do I have any public that would like to speak on this case? With the absence of the public, I'll close the public hearing. This public hearing is now closed, and I'll open it to the commission. Ms. Garcia?
Nothing.
I just, probably more of an inquiry because you guys are more involved, but as you know, I have several friends that are at the state legislature level. My question is, I've heard some unofficial muttering that they're considering turning that into a toll road to upstep that freeway by like 15 years. Have you heard any of that in your meetings?
Well, Chair, members of the Commission, they have and they continue to perform the feasibility studies of whether it would be successful as a toll corridor, and that is out there as an option, because while they have money for this stage of the project, and then hopefully they'll put, after this stage of the project, they'll put money within a 5-year budget to start acquiring right-of-way. What they don't have yet is that third scenario of actually developing the freeway. And all likelihood is right now that this freeway or any new freeways like this are probably not going to be developed on their traditional funding sources, because that revenue is not there. That revenue is being utilized to just basically, we're in a maintenance mode, as you can see, you know, trying to deal with what we have. So a while back, the state did pass the law that allowed public-private partnerships, or 3Ps, and that would allow a funding mechanism. And then if it goes that way, then the scenario is that you know, the investors and the toll companies, well, they're still not going to go out there and build it unless they can establish that there's enough adequate traffic to create a return on their investment. We're not there yet on the funding, but the important thing is to remember that all freeways go through this life cycle, and you go from just this broad concept. In fact, this study started with the corridor being analyzed all the way into the Gila River Indian Community to east of 79. So it's come quite a ways and will continue to progress. I think that, again, at the end of this year or next year for certain, you're going to see ADOT rolling out again with another public meeting event to get to that next stage in this process.
So the push to go west has stopped. This is pretty much the ballpark of where it's going.
This is fairly close to where all the options lie, with the exception of in the environmental analysis that they've done. We know that there's going to be some challenges approximately around the landfill area, 287, because, I mean, we know that there's some issues there from a cultural environmental standpoint. So that will be an area where probably some very creative threading is going to apply. And then also we know that it's still out there in the middle area of that scenario where Anthem would be extremely impacted by the corridor, and we know that that would have the result of having a negative impact on downtown. As you get north, the question is really, is it hugging the cap as much as possible and staying closer to Queen Creek and Santan Valley, or is it veering a little bit east to be more central within the state Superstition Vistas land development? We think at this point that it's still consistent that it will end up around the Ironwood alignment off of the 60.
Thank you. Commissioners, anything else?
I have one follow-up question, if I may. I was going to ask this earlier. I'll assume there are no stupid questions. Is there a reason why it's hugging west of Attaway? Why would it not go east of Attaway?
The challenge in that particular area is mostly in how it goes from coming out of Merrill Ranch and crossing Felix and then heading north again. So it has when they started this project, they said the rule that they were trying to follow was to not to put the corridor over any land that had existing development on it, and not to put the corridor over land that had imminent development on it. And so, because there is in that area some sections of land that have homes on them in the county, they've been threading them through that area. And then we have to also thread it around to not have an impact on Crestfield Manor and Wild Horse Estates and other projects. So that area actually around Arizona Farms, Felix, and Attaway was probably one of the more challenging areas to figure out how to get the corridor in there. And the other options were really, it was impossible to go west, and if you go east, then the scenario was that it went all the way east of where our planning boundary is, so off the map and into the white area. And then when it did that, well, it's serving for the foreseeable future, it's serving nobody and not having any economic impact, and would be detrimental to the town. So in all the scenarios where they're at now on their study, it is hitting Arizona Farms Road about that point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the commission? If I have no more questions from the commission, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we forward a favorable recommendation on case PZC-22-14-GPA.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion on the floor this evening to forward a favorable recommendation on case number PZC 22-14-GPA North-South ADOT Freeway Corridor. Motion this evening was made by Commissioner Petty, seconded by Commissioner Pranzo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please forward a favorable recommendation to the Town Council on this case. Next agenda item for this evening will be case number 5F. This is case number PZC 23-14 GPA. This is the Reserve at Lookout Mountain Minor GPA. This is a presentation, discussion, and recommendation of a request by United Engineering Group on behalf of RMG Lucky Hunt, LLC, for a minor general plan amendment to the Town of Florence's 2020 general plan. More specifically, this application requests an amendment to the Town of Florence 2020 general plan future land use map for the removal of aggregate resources overlay from the proposed reserve at Lookout Mountain Planned Community located at the southwest corner of Hunt Highway and the Heritage Road alignment due to the aggregate mining use being permanently eliminated from the subject site.
Chairman, members of the commission, this is extremely straightforward. A few years ago, the state said on our land use plans we had to identify any areas where there were aggregate resources being mined. At the time we began that process, there was a small aggregate, very minor aggregate operation on this property, but it was documented with the state. It wasn't very active, but it did exist, and you can see on the aerial where that was. Well, the property changed hands, and as you saw tonight, they're planning to do residential on the property, and this use is no longer valid, and there's no state mandate to show aggregate resources on a property where they no longer exist. And so we're just taking it off the map.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open it to the public. Public hearing for case number PZC 23-14 GPA is now open. Do I have any public that would like to speak on this case? In the absence of the public, I'll close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed, and I open it to the commission. Ms. Garcia? Mr. Petty? Okay. If there's no further questions or discussions on this case, I will take a motion.
Forward a recommendation of approval of the minor GPA PZC 23-14 GPA.
I'll second that.
I have a motion on the floor to forward a favorable recommendation to the Town Council on case number PZC 23-14 GPA, the Reserve at Lookout Mountain Minor GPA. Motion tonight was made by Ms. Garcia and seconded by Commissioner Pranzo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please forward a favorable recommendation to the Town Council in this case. Next agenda item for this evening will be agenda item number 6. This is the call to the public for Commission's response. Call to the public for the public comments on issues within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Individual commission members may respond to the criticism made, or they may ask that the staff put the matter raised on a future agenda. At this time, the call to the public is now open. Do I have any public that would like to address the commission at this time? State your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is John Dantico, 5597 East Dionysus, and this was regarding any of the comments made this evening. Is that, am I understanding you properly?
You can address us, and we can determine whether we will reply or assign it to staff at that point.
A question. Okay, so my question is that when you had the knowledge, I've asked this question previously, maybe this is the time to ask this because it's directly related to the comments that were made earlier. On the maps that were presented at the September 2013 meeting, there was no indication of the change in current status on the state land, Lookout Mountain 2. And I'm just curious, you know, what was the thinking? Certainly, the brilliance, I really enjoy you guys' work, by the way. I appreciate your diligent planning. I'm impressed, seriously impressed. I think you guys are doing a great job, but it's negatively impacting me and my friends and neighbors and stuff. But why wasn't that put on the map and fully revealed? Can anybody answer that?
What I'll do is, because during the call to the public, I cannot allow staff to address you. What I will do is after the meeting, I will have staff get your phone number and have them handle the question outside of this context. That way you do get that answer, but I cannot have staff dialogue during the call to the public to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. And by the way, I do, you know, as though I oppose what you guys are doing with that particular thing, I appreciate your diligent work, honestly, I do. I just don't think that it's in my best interest or in the best interest of my neighbors. And so, anyway, that was my question on that particular point, so, okay.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Do I have any more public that would like to address the commission at this time? With the absence of the public, I will close the call to the public and open it to the commission. Commissioner Pranzo?
I have no comment.
Commissioner Garcia?
No comment.
Commissioner Petty?
Nothing.
And I think I said everything earlier, so I don't have anything myself either. So with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:05 p.m.
I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:05, made by Commissioner Petty, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is now adjourned.